I faked a medical emergency to test my family's love. What I discovered in that empty hospital room was so much worse than I imagined. They didn't just fail the test, they proved they never cared at all. Before we start, don't forget to like this video, comment where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story like this. Have you experienced something like this? Please let me know in the comments. My name is Dorothy. I'm 71 years old, and I live in Seattle, Washington. And this is the story of how I faked a heart attack to discover the truth about my family's love, and how that truth changed everything. When I first conceived the plan, I felt like I was losing my mind, but I had to know the truth. I had 2 children, Robert, 45, and Susan, 42. Both lived out of state, but close enough to come in an emergency. For the past 5 years, I had been the one making all the effort to maintain our relationship. They never called unless they needed something. They forgot my birthday, didn't invite me to holidays, and never checked on me when I was sick. It was time for a test. The idea came to me on a lonely Tuesday evening as I sat in my living room staring at my silent phone. I had been feeling increasingly invisible to my own children, like I was just an obligation they checked off their list during major holidays or when they needed financial help. I realized I had no concrete proof of whether they actually loved me or if I was just fooling myself with wishful thinking. That's when I decided to create a situation where their true feelings would be impossible to hide. Wednesday morning at 9 a.m., I called Robert first. I made my voice shake as I said, "Son, I'm having terrible chest pains. I can't breathe. I'm calling an ambulance." Then I gave the same message to Susan. I told both of them the hospital name. They're taking me to Seattle General. I actually did call an ambulance. I told the paramedics I was experiencing chest pain and shortness of breath. Given my age, they didn't question it for a second and rushed me straight to the hospital. In the emergency room, the doctor examined me thoroughly. They ran every test: EKG, blood work, chest x-rays, the works. Of course, nothing showed up because I was perfectly healthy. But due to my age and the symptoms I reported, they said they'd keep me under observation for 24 hours, possibly longer. "Should we call your family?" the nurse asked. "No, thank you," I said. "They're already on their way." But they weren't. The first day passed. No one came. The phone didn't even ring. By the second day, I started making excuses to myself. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe they had work obligations they couldn't get out of. Maybe they were flying in and there were flight delays. I kept checking my phone obsessively, waiting for a call, a text, anything. Nothing. The third day arrived and I was still alone. The nurses were starting to look at me with pity. "Where is your family?" one of them asked gently. "Has anyone been asking about you?" "They're very busy," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "They'll be here soon." But I was starting to realize they wouldn't be coming at all. On the 4th day, the attending physician came to my bedside with a concerned expression. "Mrs. Anderson, your test results are all normal. It appears this was likely stress-related. However, I'm concerned about your support system. Do you have family we should be speaking with about your care going forward?" I looked around the empty room. No flowers, no get-well cards, no signs that anyone in the world cared whether I lived or died. "Doctor," I said quietly,
I thought I did, but I'm beginning to realize I was wrong. That evening, they discharged me. As I took the taxi home to my empty house, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life, including the 2 years since my husband had passed away. At least when he died, I knew he had loved me. Now, I was questioning whether my own children had ever felt anything genuine for me at all.
The first thing I did when I got home was check my phone messages. Nothing. No missed calls from Robert or Susan. No voicemails asking how I was doing. No text messages checking on my condition. It was as if that dramatic phone call I had made to both of them had never happened. I spent that entire night staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I'd had with my children over the past few years. I thought about all the times I had called them and gotten rushed, distracted responses. All the times I had invited them to visit and received polite excuses. All the times I had sent birthday gifts and gotten perfunctory thank you texts days later. The signs had been there all along. I had just been too desperate to maintain the illusion of a loving family to see them clearly. The next morning, I decided to conduct one final test. I would call them and see how they reacted to learning about my hospital stay. I called Robert first. "Mom, how are you?" he said, his tone cheerful and casual, as if nothing had happened. "I've been in the hospital since Wednesday," I said simply. "They thought I was having a heart attack." There was a pause. Then, "Oh, wow, was it serious?" "Robert," I said slowly, "don't you remember? I called you from the ambulance. I told you they were taking me to Seattle General." Another pause, longer this time. "Oh, right. Yeah, but then you didn't call back, so I figured it wasn't anything major. I'm glad you're okay." "I'm glad you're okay?" 4 days in the hospital, and his response was that he was glad I was okay? He hadn't even bothered to find out whether I actually was okay. "Robert, I was in the hospital for 4 days. Alone." "Oh," he said, and I could hear him getting uncomfortable. "I was really swamped at work, Mom. You know how it is. Plus, if it had been really serious, you would have called again, right?" I hung up without another word. Next, I called Susan. "Hi, Mom," she said brightly. "What's up?" "I was in the hospital this week," I said. "They thought I was having a heart attack." "Oh my gosh, are you okay now?" she asked. But her tone was distracted, like she was doing something else while talking to me. "Susan, I called you from the ambulance on Wednesday. Do you remember?" Wednesday. "Oh, right. But then I didn't hear anything else, so I assumed everything was fine. You know how these things go. They always think the worst first, right? I was actually on a business trip to Portland, so it would have been really hard for me to get away." A business trip to Portland. Portland was 3 hours away by car. She couldn't take 3 hours to check on her mother, who she thought was having a heart attack? "I was alone in that hospital for 4 days, Susan." "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. If it had been really serious, you would have called me back. You always exaggerate these medical things." I always exaggerate. That's what my daughter thought of my health concerns. I hung up on her, too. As I sat in my kitchen, holding my silent phone, the full weight of my discovery hit me. My children didn't love me. They might feel obligated to me. They might have some abstract concept of filial duty, but they didn't actually care about my well-being. I was just a box they checked off in their busy lives.
The fake heart attack had become real in a way. My heart really was broken. But as the initial devastation wore off, it was replaced by something else. Clarity. For the first time in years, I could see my situation exactly as it was, without the rosy filter of parental hope. My children were never going to change. They were never going to suddenly become the loving, attentive adults I had hoped they would grow into. This was who they were, and continuing to expect more from them was only going to cause me more pain.
It was time to make some changes. The next morning, I called my attorney, George Henderson, and scheduled an appointment. "George," I said, sitting across from his mahogany desk, "I need to completely rewrite my will." He raised his eyebrows. "My existing will left everything to Robert and Susan in equal shares. The house, my savings, my jewelry, everything. The total value was approximately $485,000. "This is a significant decision, Dorothy," he said carefully. "What's prompting this change?" I told him everything. The fake heart attack, the 4 days of silence, the casual responses when I finally called them. George listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "I see," he said finally. "And what would you like to do instead?" "I want everything to go to charity," I said. "Specifically, I want to establish funds for elderly people who have been abandoned by their families. I want to help other people who find themselves in my situation." George nodded. "That's a very meaningful legacy, Dorothy. Are you certain you want to exclude your children entirely?" "George," I said, "they excluded themselves." We spent the next 2 hours drafting a new will. Everything was to be divided among several charities: a fund for elderly companionship programs, a hospice care facility, and an organization that provided support for seniors who had been financially or emotionally abandoned by their families.
But I also included a letter to be read to Robert and Susan after my death. In it, I explained exactly why I had changed my will, detailing the fake heart attack and their responses. I ended the letter with these words: "This decision wasn't made in anger, but in acceptance. I loved you both unconditionally your entire lives, but I finally understand that love was not reciprocated. I hope someday you'll understand that actions have consequences, and indifference is a choice." A week after the will was finalized, I decided to tell them what I had done. But first, I wanted to see if they would reach out on their own, show any concern about how I was doing after my hospital stay. They didn't. 2 weeks passed without a single call from either of them. Finally, I sent them both identical letters, along with copies of the new will. The letter was brief. "The heart attack I told you about wasn't real, but what I learned from it was. This is my new will. Your response to my fake emergency showed me your true feelings, and my will now reflects at reality." My phone started ringing within hours. Robert called first, and he was furious. "Mom, this is insane. You can't cut us out of your will because of some stupid test. That's manipulative and unfair." "Manipulative," I said calmly. "Was lying alone in a hospital for 4 days manipulative? You weren't really sick. You were lying to us. I was testing whether you loved me enough to come when you thought I was dying. You failed that test spectacularly. This isn't fair, Mom. We have lives, responsibilities. We can't just drop everything every time you have a health scare." "Robert, in 45 years of your life, how many times have I asked you to drop everything for me?"
He couldn't answer that. Susan called an hour later, crying. "Mom, please don't do this. We love you. You know we do.
We were just busy, and we thought you were okay. Susan, if your child called you from an ambulance saying they thought they were having a heart attack, would you wait 4 days to check on them? That's different, Mom. You're always, you worry about every little thing. Every little thing? I thought I was dying, Susan. But you weren't really dying. No, but you didn't know that, and you didn't care enough to find out. The calls continued for weeks. Both of them tried every approach: anger, guilt, bargaining, promises to do better. But none of them could explain away those 4 days of silence. None of them could justify their complete indifference to what they believed was their mother's medical emergency. Robert showed up at my house a month later, looking haggard and desperate. "Mom, please, I have a mortgage, kids to put through college. I'm counting on that inheritance." "Robert," I said, "when I thought I was having a heart attack, were you counting on me to survive it?" He stared at me, unable to respond. "The inheritance you're counting on was meant to be a gift from someone who loved you to someone who loved her back. Since the second part isn't true, there's no gift." Susan tried a different approach. She started calling me every day, sending flowers, dropping by with groceries. "See, Mom, I'm here now. I'm being a good daughter now." "Susan," I said during one of her visits, "where was this concern when you thought I was dying?" "I'm sorry, Mom. I was overwhelmed, stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to continue your business trip to Portland." She didn't have an answer for that either. 6 months have passed since I changed my will. The daily calls and visits have stopped. My children have apparently accepted that their inheritance is gone and have moved on with their lives. I haven't heard from either of them in over a month.
And you know what? I'm happier than I've been in years. I've joined a seniors book club. I volunteer at the local animal shelter. I've made friends with my neighbors, real friends who check on me when I'm sick and invite me to dinner just because they enjoy my company. I've discovered what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not what I can provide. Last week, I had a real health scare, some chest pains that turned out to be heartburn. But this time when I went to the emergency room, I had visitors. Mrs. Chen from down the street brought me magazines. Bob from the book club came by with coffee. Sarah from the animal shelter sent flowers. These people, who have known me for less than a year, showed more concern for my well-being than my own children had shown in the past decade. The fake heart attack taught me the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes you have to create a crisis to discover who really cares about you. And once you discover the truth, you have to be brave enough to accept it and act on it. My children didn't fail my test because they were busy or overwhelmed. They failed because they fundamentally don't care about me as a person. I was just an obligation to them, someone they had to tolerate because of biology, not someone they chose to love. And now that I've accepted that truth, I'm free to build relationships with people who actually want me in their lives. If you're watching this and recognizing yourself in my story, please don't waste years of your life hoping that people will change. Love shouldn't have to be tested, but sometimes it's the only way to get clarity. And when you get that clarity, trust it. You deserve to be surrounded by people who would rush to your bedside, not people who can't be bothered to return your phone calls. That's the end of my story. Have you ever had to test someone's love for you? Share your experience in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. I share stories like this every day because we all deserve to know we're not alone in these experiences.